violation. And I'm a judge, and so I don't care if you give lawyer jokes, because I have to work with them every day. So you do all you want. Usually it's my clerk and I getting out and saying, yeah, the lawyers make our lives difficult. I'm a district judge in Eagle in the 5th District, which is just, so my district is just east of us. I think the statute of limitations on the intent depends how the council crafted, because it could be seen as it's called a continuing breach. So you could have a period of time where they couldn't go back on the fine, but they could say that this breach of the covenants is right today. So they can't go back necessarily past the statute. It depends. I'm not sure how that would play out, but you can have fines. I know of a case there. The fines were around $350,000 for violations of covenants and declarations. So it can get really ugly. It wasn't an antenna. It was a little bit more substantial than that. But anyway.
Was it the water case up on?
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't my case.
Okay.
It's one that I'm aware of. We have a lot of litigation for covenant violations. Kind of the same things you were saying. People with too much time, too much money, and they just litigate it. So I had a nifty video, and I'm not sure why I won't play, but this is part of the aftermath in Katrina. We've had some developments in the United States that have had some very high-profile disasters. 9/11, of course, Katrina, where communications completely collapsed, and it's become clear to local governments, to state government, to federal government, that although we use cell phones on a daily basis, all of us do, and we think that a cell phone is as reliable as the sun coming up tomorrow, that any time that there is any kind of a ripple, any kind of a disaster involving, a couple hundred or 1,000 people, they go down. They are not as reliable as we all think. They work really well on day-to-day, plugging along type stuff, but they don't necessarily work well. They get overloaded very quickly. As soon as they get overloaded, even if the system is working, you can't get through. And a lot of agencies, Red Cross and other agencies, will utilize cell phones as part of their communication. Well, as soon as you have 1,000 people displaced and they're all on the phone trying to call their relatives saying that I'm okay, you can't get through. So in Katrina, it was the hams that were able to get through and pass those communications. So what we're going to talk about in the next, say, 15-20 minutes is ARES and RACES. And if you remember the last meeting, we discussed it a little bit. Bob asked me to look into it a little bit more. I got interested and more interested in this, and I've worked literally every day on this, on ARES and RACES for our area for the past month. And so we've made some really significant progress in the past month. We'll go to the next slide.
Do you want the lights off?
Yeah. Sure, sure. As I was just mentioning, we are really needed because when the communications go down, it may work in Cuba to work without communications because that's what they're used to, but it doesn't work in the United States. And at the 9/11 attacks, like I was mentioning before, the standard radio communications became so overloaded, so fast, they reverted back to the 1500s in messengers. And so for their essential communications, they literally had runners that the commander would write down what they needed to do. They'd give it to a runner, the runner would take off. And so we are needed in these types of situations. Go on to the next. So what I want to do today is I want to identify the different types of emergency communication organizations that we have right now. And I want to let you know what we're doing in our community, in our area right now. And also I want to show you how you can become involved. The involvement is a wide scale, everything from doing what you do in our hobby to more elaborate things. And if you're going to your HOA or to your municipality and you say, I need this antenna because I really like talking to people around the world. That's not as powerful as to say, I really need this antenna because I am part of an organization which, if our community communications break down, I'm part of that communication. I am part of this emergency communication, so I need this antenna. Not just to talk around the world, but I am part of this organization. So it can be very helpful. Go to the next. So we're going to talk about ARES and RACES. As you know, when you took your test, you studied ARES. Well, maybe some of you took the test before ARES and RACES, but you had ARES and RACES. So we're going to go through and compare these two a little bit. ARES, as you remember from your test, consists of licensed amateurs who have voluntarily registered their qualifications and equipment with their local ARES leadership for communications duty in the public service when disaster strikes. So if you want to be in ARES, all you really do is you fill out this application that I just gave you and you give it to me and you're in ARES. That's really all you really have to do. It's a very loose-net organization through ARRL, and that's how you get involved in ARES. Let's go on to RACES. RACES, on the other hand, is part of the emergency civil service administered by local governments as well as, there's actually FEMA administration as well on it now. And it's part of the amateur radio service that provides radio communications for civil preparedness purposes only during periods of local, regional, or national civil emergencies. Go one more. So what's the difference between RACES and ARES? Because they both seems like they do pretty much the same thing. Really, as a practical matter, it won't matter to you if you're in RACES or ARES as long as you're in some type of an organization. It really won't make any difference. Where it really makes the difference is in the organizational level and the administration level. If we have just an ARES group, then we work through ARRL and we work through the administration and the hierarchy in ARRL with ARES. If we have a RACES group, then we work through generally local government and we have a certification from the local government. It doesn't matter though if you have one or the other when you're in the field, when you're actually doing things. And what we're doing in our district now is we'll be both, ARES as well as RACES. So we form the ARES group, we have volunteers with ARES. However, we also go this step farther. What we're doing in Eagle County now, we've already met with the emergency management and the sheriff, and we will become certified as their civil defense emergency communications, and that becomes RACES. There are some other advantages if you're also in RACES. There are some other frequencies that you can operate in an emergency. You have also, since you're being dispatched by the county, if there are injuries as a result of being deployed, you may have workers' comp type of things because you're actually deployed as part of the county with RACES. So the main difference, ARES, we're working through the volunteer organization through ARRL. RACES is you're actually working through as part of the county government when you are deployed.
So if you're in RACES as an individual, do they call you a racist?
Yeah, my wife caught that one too. We now have an ARES organization, and we're developing and very close to a RACES designation in Eagle County. And where we're at on that is that we've already had the meetings. The county government is supportive of us, and it's been put back in my lap to develop what we call an MOU, a memorandum of understanding between the county and us. And I'm writing that and putting that together. And hopefully within the next month, we'll have a RACES and ARES organization in Eagle. Once we do that in Eagle, then I'm going to expand that out to Pitkin and Garfield and just take that same MOU and that same idea and let it grow. But we can work with ARES immediately. We don't have to get the county buy-off until we're ready in each of the counties. But we're part of the ARRL ARES network. In northwestern Colorado, there's a few people that have been active in ARES, but very, very few. When I contacted our section leader for the state of Colorado for ARRL, he referred me to Robert Wareham in Denver, who then got back with me. I've had several conversations on the phone. They appointed me to be head of our area of Eagle, Garfield and Pitkin. And then a couple days later they called back and they said, what we really need is somebody to lead northwestern Colorado. And so then I was appointed as the Division EC, Division Emergency Communications in northwestern Colorado. So now we've expanded and have gone all the way now to Wyoming border, Utah border, and then Mesa County is about as far south as it goes. And we took Pitkin. Pitkin was in another district, and I said we really should have Pitkin with Eagle and Garfield because of you, because of the club. I said it only makes sense if we put us all into one district. So now we're part of an ARES network. We just really don't have any members yet. But we have now an ARES network, and that's why I passed out the application, so that hopefully we'll get some volunteers today. Let's go on to the next slide. So what's going to be expected of you if you volunteer and say, yes, I'm willing to help out our communities if a disaster strikes? You can literally do as much or as little as you want to do. If you are a brand new ham and you have no experience and you don't have a radio and all you have, like I had not that long ago, all I had was my cell phone and Echolink, and that's it, we can still use you in ARES. If you've been a ham for 50 years and your house looks like Phil's, that's got antennas all over the place, and you can do absolutely anything, we can use you. So anywhere in the middle there, there's a place for you. Go on. If you're interested in going out into the field, that's great. Then we can use you and you can go out into the field. There is some training, especially if we get in, use RACES. You have to go through some FEMA training. There's several FEMA courses that they're online. They're pretty straightforward. They're pretty simple. What I've been doing over the past month or so is I just take 30 minutes in the morning and I go through one of the classes. Each of them take between 20 and 30 minutes to go through that one class. And then after you go through all the classes, you take the test, and then you get a certification and you can print it out. This is much easier than taking a technician's license or something like that. This isn't rocket science. It's pretty straightforward, so you understand the chain of command and how things work on an incident. We also are putting together a weekend class that the metro area ARES is going to help us with, that will have basically one day of this is the nuts and bolts, this is what you do, this is how you do pass messages back and forth. Something that Mesa County has done is also sit down and say, all right, if you have to put a radio, hook up a radio, make sure everybody knows how to do that. You know, make sure that you know how to do not just your own radio, but maybe some other radios and so forth, so that everybody is familiar with radios, just some of the nuts and bolts. The second day, we're going to have some really basic Red Cross stuff, not paramedic style stuff, but just really, really basic Red Cross if you want to go into the field, so that you know how to do CPR, you know how to do some stuff. It's a high stress environment. So we have some very basic training on the second day. Go on to the next one. Now it's anticipated Colorado is moving towards what we call an OXCOM instead of ARES and RACES. By having these two organizations of ARES and RACES, it's actually created competition. That some organizations say, we're ARES, another organization says, we're RACES, and it has created some conflict. So Colorado is now moving towards auxiliary communication, OXCOM, and trying to abolish the competition between the two. We've, in our area, last month I formed a nonprofit corporation called Auxiliary Communications Corporation, so that we have something that we can do and fit into that and go forward with that when that's ready, and that we can also use that as an entity that we can volunteer for. And I haven't gone through the IRS stuff yet. I've started the 501c3 process. That's kind of an elaborate process, and so I haven't gone through all of that, but we do have a nonprofit now. When Colorado moves forward in that, there's going to be more classes that will be required. ICS is the Incident Command System, and a little bit more training. Right now we're not exactly there, but that's kind of coming down the pike. We even have our own logo. Here, go back. Go back. A little more.
Oops.
Right click and say back, I think. Back.
Previous.
Previous, yeah. Right there. Yeah. We got our own logo now. We got that last week. So we have our own logo with our counties on it, since we're our own district. Right.
Cool.
Now, if you don't want to go out in the field, and all you want to do is say, okay, if something happens, I'm more than willing to help, and I'm willing to go to my chair where my radio is, and I'll sit down there, and I'll give you a hand if you need help. That's fine. There's a place for you. If that's all you want to do, you say, I don't really want to go out into the cold, I don't want to go out into the rain, I don't want to go out in the field. However, if you need somebody just at home to relay messages, then I'll do that. We only have the 1 day of training, that first day, and we'll probably have a meeting every quarter just so that we can get together. So it's very minimal requirements, but again, if you're needed, then we'll give you a call, and you can stay at home. And that can be very important. I think it was in maybe in the floods, I can't recall, where you have a local disaster, and so you have no communications locally, and so what they were doing is calling outside of the locale. So if there was something in even the metro area, they might call us because we have telephones outside of the disaster, so they call us on the radio, and then from here we can call other places in the country and say that somebody's okay or whatever. So there's a place, even if you don't want to go climbing up and do mountain rescue or something, and set up a relay there. And we also need leaders. It's kind of strange because ARES has been around for a long time, and we have a hierarchy of organization. We have lots of places for this organization with blanks beside that. In Northwestern Colorado, we really don't have a lot of leadership. And so if anybody here is interested in saying, yeah, this sounds like something you might want to be involved with, let me know, and we can find some place for you if you want to help build this organization. Say there's opportunities right now for leadership if that's something that you're interested in. So the types of incidents. Originally, we were part of the civil defense. So back after World War II, when this began going, we got going, we were part of the civil defense. And that's why we were formed. Because it's part of the Cold War, and so that if we had a nuclear disaster or a nuclear strike, how are we going to have communications? And that's how we were formed. Now modernly, we're used for all kinds of incidents as well as public activities. As we mentioned earlier on the race, that's something that ARES frequently would do. They would set up the communications for a community race, bicycle race, marathons, because they use that as a training opportunity. Mountain rescues. I haven't met yet with our mountain rescue. I know in Clear Creek County, their mountain rescue uses hams and for their mountain rescues because there's so many places that you can't get out with cell phones and that repeaters can't get out. And so they have a ham that's on their mountain rescue and operates their communications.
The one place where we do it is we work with the mountain rescue in Aspen when we do the Ride for the Cure, that 100-mile bike ride up there. So we do work with guys there, and I can give you John's name.
Yeah.
Thanks. It's very active.
Major disasters, of course, like we were talking about before, where communications break down. floods and winter blizzards. Here we don't have, we have blizzards, but it's a little bit easier. In Clear Creek, I lived in Clear Creek for 20 years, and when we closed the highway, it was a disaster because nobody could go anywhere. Everybody would just flood the town, and we ended up setting up shelters and so forth. And so communication became real
Only
difficult.
half the interstate was broken, though.
Yeah, half you drive on. The wildfires, we discussed that last month. We would not be used operationally in the fire because that's part of the federal government and they have that. But where it becomes important with wildfires is Red Cross and shelters and communications that way.
Happened that during the one fire here, the only person who knew how to coordinate the radios, because we had 3 different fire groups coming in nationally, was a ham.
Yeah.
And he did that.
They've done that at the metro area too. It may have been the floods a couple of years ago. They had a communications vehicle that nobody knew how to operate. And so they brought in a ham because we like radios. And so the ham figured out how to do it. So they had the equipment, but there's no real way to make it work. Basically, anytime where people are dislocated, where we have shelters put up, communications tend to be a nightmare. And that's where we can be used. Anytime so if you can think of anything where you might have a Red Cross shelter, they're probably going to have communication needs and can use us. And then fun events, like we were just talking about, the race. There's a race in, bicycle race, a large one in Grand County coming up September, that they've already asked if hams in the area can set up communications. It's going to require a lot of people. So there's a place for everyone, and everybody is needed. So, what is America's most reliable network? Amateur radio. We are. We are America's most reliable network. So, the time to prepare is now, before we have an incident, rather than trying to do it ad hoc. I've given everybody an application. There's 2 pages to it. The first one is the official ARES page, and the second one is for us. This is part of the second page as a result of talking to some of the other ARES in rural areas, and they said that in the metro area they don't really need 4x4s as much, but in the rural areas it's helpful if you know who has a 4x4 and who doesn't, you know, who can drive to an area if there's difficulty. And I listed, in terms of participation, several different levels. If you're willing to go out in the field, but you really don't want to walk anywhere, you just want to be able to drive up to the communications tent or the communications trailer, and that's fine with you, that's fine. But if you're also willing to, you know, climb up to a ridge to set up some kind of a repeater station, and you're interested in doing that, that's fine too. So whatever you would like to participate in. If you're interested, and I hope that some of us are, if you fill that out and give it to me today so that I can pass it down, we can go to the next step where we have more than just an organization set up, but we actually have people in that organization willing to lend a hand if we need them. All right, yeah.
I'm not a lawyer, so I didn't really absorb the RACES thing. So in the context of what you're heading locally, which seems to me to be ARES, how does RACES relate to that?
We'll do both. Because we'll set up an ARES organization because there's an organizational framework with ARES, and we can tie in to nationally in the state very easily. We take that organization that we set up, and then we say, okay, we have members now throughout Eagle County, Pitkin County, Garfield County. I go to Pitkin County, go to the Office of Emergency Management, and I say, we already have this organization set up. Now, will you work with us, and will you designate us as an emergency communications, and then we become RACES? Does that make sense?
So in other words, it's only when we make that point of connection with an official agency.
Yes.
Having done so, do we get equipment, or do we have further
No.
opportunities or limitations, or what happens?
You can have all the equipment that you want to buy.
Right, about concerts or-
Yeah, we don't have anything right now for that. There may be some grants or something. That's another reason I formed a 501c or formed a 501c3. But right now, it's in the definition, volunteers using their time, their knowledge, their equipment. Yeah,
The classes and stuff, are they paid for by,
they're free.
okay.
They're free. They're paid for by FEMA. And so it's just an online class, and you just get online and you click, you go, they give you a test at the end. They say don't cheat, and you take the test, and that's it.